Pod in My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pod in My Noggin. I'm your host, as always, CK Sims. It would be weird if I changed. Today, we are joined by Inna Segal from Australia and the author of this lovely book of magic, The Secret Language of Your Body. And I can't read backwards today for some reason, but The Essential Guide to Health and Wellness is the book. Now, we're going to get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. So this book is really interesting to me. I think what I like about the book the most is sort of the natural language choice that you've made in the book. It doesn't feel too woo-woo, okay? All right? And it doesn't...
That's good, I like that.
And it doesn't read too technical, if you will. So, when you're reading through it, the flow is really nice. You can go through it, and you can find the parts of your body, the different ailments that you may have, like different things like that. So I really enjoyed that about the book, because oftentimes you pick up books and they might have useful information, but they don't read naturally, if you will. So kudos on that. Once again, showing the book cover for everybody. Let's talk about younger Inna. What was it like to grow up?
Well, I was actually born in Belarus.
Okay.
So I left when I was 9 and then spent just over 9 months in Italy, not far from Rome, because we were on our way to the US. We were going to live either in New York or Chicago, because my parents had friends and relatives there. And then while we were in Italy, which I loved, just loved, we were, I guess the easiest way to say it is, rejected from going to the US. We were told that we weren't accepted, which I just think that they had their numbers, like the limits, at different time, and we obviously got into the time where period of being limited. So my parents had one friend in Australia, and they called him and said, "Can you sponsor us?" And then we ended up in Melbourne, Australia. So that was kind of the beginning of my journey. I found Australia initially to be a lot harder than I thought I would. I didn't know one word of English, but I found it very easy to learn Italian. So I thought, it's going to be the same, piece of cake. And it wasn't. It was a lot harder. And whilst I felt extremely accepted in Italy, I was not accepted in Australia, by the children. I was from the West country, it wasn't, I felt like here people were very, much either you come from the US, England, or Canada, or you're not accepted, basically, at that time when I came. And so I was bullied a lot, and this bullying kind of ended up within a very short period of time. I started getting psoriasis all over my elbows, in particular knees. And I was, just struggling to be in my own skin, struggling to be myself. I felt I was the most myself in Italy and the least myself when I came to Australia. And then I ended up going to high school, and my parents decided that it was, that they would pay for a private school, essentially. And it was really interesting how they felt really free in Australia. They felt free to express themselves, because in Belarus, they were very internalized and essentially told like you can't say anything because you could, God knows who can hear it and so on. So they loved it. They were like, oh, this is so free. Whereas for me, it was quite the opposite experience where in the high school that I went to, so my parents obviously, they came to Australia, they had zero money, like they borrowed money. So they were already in debt. And it was a constant struggle for them. Whereas the school I went to was for people who grew up in families that, to me, represented something that I'd never been seen. It was like palaces. They lived in massive, massive houses, and they wore labels. I didn't know what a label was, and my friends and I, who were all kind of from the Eastern European um, countries, were all attacked both for being from the countries, but also from not being from this
Well,
crazy wealth that
yeah.
you know they experienced. So that amplified everything. And so I'd go to school and feel very self-protected, and then but I did have some friends at that point, and I'd go home and it was always this stress around money, which actually is quite interesting because when you look at lower back pain, which is what I started to develop, it's all about that I need safety, I need support, um, and it's all about safety around finances as well and moving forward. Whereas it made sense later, so much sense later on for me that I would have this as an issue for so long. So, years passed by, my back pain got worse, my psoriasis got worse, all of that leading to anxiety. I also had digestive issues, and this was early on. I really felt like again, you don't notice things as a child, but later on, when I looked around, every person in the family had digestive issues show up in some way or another. And so, including that, my grandfather and my mom ended up with colon cancers and stuff like, it was pretty intense. So, when I got to being, I don't know, 18, 19, I was seeing somebody for my health issues constantly. At 18, I'd met at that time, my first husband, and he was very, very open to the alternative world because my mom was not. We were mainly focused on medicine or anything that was more scientific, medical. So I started going to different people. I also got pregnant and ended up losing the baby at 8.5 months. So it was essentially stillborn. I didn't know that was even possible. That kind of spun me out into just pain constantly, pain in places I didn't have pain before. It's like just it was painful to be alive, to move my arms was painful, everything was painful. And we got to a place where I was seeing this chiropractor, and I think, as things got progressively worse, and I wasn't letting go. I wasn't really fully moving forward. I just wanted to die. I was like, I don't really see the point of life at this, moment in my life. He essentially, I think, wasn't frustrated and didn't know what to do with me because I was seeing him 3 times a week. And finally, on this particular day, I got there, and it was a day where I could not move. My body, it wasn't just from that day, but it'd been several days where I felt like one part of my body was looking in one direction and the other in another. I could not move. I couldn't move my body. I felt twisted. That's the best way to describe it. And then when I ended up in his office, I mean, he came out of his office. He didn't even allow me to go in, and he just looked at me and he went, "So your body's stuck?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, that part. What are you going to do to help me?" And it was this really profound moment where I think he really connected within, and he thought about it, and he went, nothing. I said, well, what do you mean nothing? And he went, your body wants to be stuck. And it was very powerful the way he said it. And then he said, go home. I have to say, I had zero energy when I got there. I was very victim-like, very like, oh. And on the way home, I was enraged. I had a lot of energy. I was so enraged. But this idea, this thought that my body wanted to be stuck, even though, in my mind, I didn't think so. I don't know, I started playing with this idea of, is there a language that it's speaking, but it's a language at a level that I'm actually in conflict with, or I'm against it. Somehow I'm creating the opposite. And my body is not, and I hear this from so many people, and I read this like on social media where people say, I feel like I was just unlucky, or, like my body is just doing this thing against me. And that's how I felt. And then all of a sudden I was like, is it, or am I doing it to myself? And so then I went home and I was like, I'm going to heal myself now. I don't know how, but I'm doing it. And I literally felt like with that decision, like everything in me was so aligned. And I literally put my hands on my back to support, for support. Later on, I realized that there was a connection with the mind and, having my hands on my back. But as I was doing that, I, for the first time, allowed myself to breathe deeper, because I realized how shallowly I was always breathing, because I wanted to hide. And then, of course, my mind was negative, so I was counting backwards from 30. And at that point, I asked for something that was very, very uncomfortable for me, partly because after having this child that died, I was in a real conflict with anything that was kind of divine. I wasn't sure, and so I just went, if there is anything divine out there that can help me, I need help now. So it wasn't very sweet in that sense. I actually didn't expect anything. I thought nothing would happen. And within moments, there was a warmth that was it was like waves of warmth. And as I had my eyes closed, I literally felt like sunshine, you know, golden type of sunshine going into my body and into, my eyes. And I remember thinking, okay, something's happening, but okay. And then this other thought that was such a strange thought, because I'd never had it before, came into my head, and it was like, I wonder what my back really looks like and if I could see it. And again, there was this sense of as if someone was there and literally switched a light in my head. And all of a sudden I could see my spine. And I thought, I got a fright. But then I thought, okay, so why do I have this? And everything that I've just talked about started flashing kind of as memories, but also as wisdom and insights. So, my move to Australia and just going to the school and crying every day and being bullied and being attacked. And I'm not saying that I even understood that it was related to my skin or anything. I just understood that my body from that moment became very tense. And it was like, it went, I'm going to hold it. Survival, right? I've got to survive through this. I've got to live through this. How long is this going to take? I don't know, but I'm just going to hold. And as I was feeling into that and understanding that and the financial aspect with my parents and the schools, and I also saw my grandparents who'd gone through massive traumas during the war, it all kind of started to make some sense, and my body was unwinding because I was really acknowledging what was being held. And after a while and crying, I felt asleep, but it wasn't this victim crying that I had done before. It was a letting go. And I fell asleep, and the next day when I woke up, I felt renewed in some way. I felt like I wasn't holding things. And I mean, I had experiences obviously going to different practitioners and there was release, but it felt more like a physical release. Whereas this was much more, I'm I have chosen to let go of this. I've recognized it myself. And so I still had pain. I'm not going to lie and say that I didn't have anything, but there was still about 30% of pain there and discomfort, which made me go, all right, well, let's explore for the next few weeks and see what happens. And so I basically just got out of bed when I had to or did whatever I had to. And then I would come back and I would write and journal and see what showed up and, just do whatever. I didn't really know what I was doing. But by the end of these few weeks, there was definitely a real change in my body, a letting go in a way that I hadn't. And the most obvious was that the psoriasis was gone from my skin and I didn't have back pain. I was very excited because I was one of those girly girls who really wanted to wear high heels, and I felt very deprived that I hadn't been able to. I was like, yes, I'm going to be able to wear high heels, and and have a normal life essentially. The digestive issues were the longest to work with, and I still have to be quite aware of what I eat and and how much of it I eat. I mean, I at that point, anything I ate was pretty much could explode in my body just because of the state that I was in. But slowly, I started to be able to eat more and more, and but it took a long, long time, the digestive aspect, because it was very intertwined, I felt, with my grandmother in particular, well, both of my grandparents, and the fact that they'd held so much trauma as well and had not processed it at all.
So generational.
Yeah. Yeah.
That so like it so it's so interesting, right? Because like I'm listening to you talk, and I sometimes I will drift off into what maybe members would be thinking in that process. And I feel like the need to come in and say to the audience that's listening, like, nothing you said just now to me seems out there. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like it seems rooted, right? And so like I have had a similar experience in my life where sort of cognitive restructuring my inner dialogue has had a lot of positive physical changes. And so as you're speaking about certain things and the things that came into your mind and all of those things, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it was different. I approached it differently, but there's power in that, right? Because our body keeps score, and our minds and our subconsciouses are way more powerful than we give them credit to be, right? And the stuff that we hang on to. So this was around 18, 19 years old, you said. How long, and you had sort of cleared up your psoriasis and you got rid of your back pain. I love that you said that the digestive system is the longest thing that took, and also still something you have to be very mindful of today, because like me, hi, I'm the problem, it's me, because I have this as well, right? But how long after then did you start to realize that, wait a second, okay, I was able to do this for myself, and I started to see these changes, that you thought, wait, could I help other people in a similar fashion? Like, how did that happen?
That was a funny one. And just to clarify, this happened more towards when I was 21. So
21?
I still had many, because I had the baby when I was 20. So this kind of was in that year between 20 and 21, towards later part of the 20s. Well, it was funny. Those two things that happened that were really weird, strange for me at the time. So one of them was my mum. she worries a lot, let's just say, and she had really struggled with me having that much pain, and at times her and I would be crossing the road and I'd just go, I can't walk, and she'd have to try and kind of pull me, and it was very stressful for her. And so when I had that healing experience, she was the most excited. She was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So she and I think it was around similar time. I don't remember which story happened first because it was so long ago, but I do remember her calling me and she said, hey, Dad is in pain. He hurt his leg at work and he's struggling with his knee. So can you do something? And I said to her, excuse me, like, do what? And she said, well, whatever you've done for yourself, surely you can help him. And I'm like, firstly, I am at home and he is wherever he is. How do you want me to do that? And she said, I don't know, just try something. And I was like, I don't, okay, whatever. I said to her, fine, I will concentrate on his knee and I will see what happens and I'll call you back. So I was lying in bed. I remember I was sitting out and I was concentrating on his knee and I just kept seeing these images of boats, boat.
Lose you? Might have lost you. I don't hear you anymore. We had a quick technical issue. We are back. We're going to jump back into Inna telling us a story about how she actually got into realizing that she could do this work by helping others. And it was your mom, you had said.
So I think so. There were two experiences around the similar time. So one of them was my mom called me and she said, can you do some healing on your dad because you healed yourself, so I'm surely you can help him. He hurt his leg at work and he's struggling to work. And I was a little bit resistant, and then I just said to her, I'll focus on his knee. If something happens, I'll call you. And so as I was focusing on his knee, I kept seeing this image of boats, just one boat after another. And I called her back and I said, just for my own sanity, did he hurt his leg at work or on a boat? And she said, definitely at work. He has not been on a boat. And I went, okay, all right, I'll get back to you. And then he calls me 2 minutes later and he says to me, what are you doing? And I said to him, I don't know if Mom told you, but I have this new ability where I heal myself and I'm focusing on you and I keep seeing these boats. And I just wanted to know, were you on a boat or not? And he went, I was on a boat, but I don't need you to be telling your mom these types of things. And I said to him, maybe you should tell the truth more often. And he was like, I don't know. I mean, it was funny, but he was just like, I'm really, really happy for you. I'm so glad that you're feeling better. But when it comes to me, no more telling your mom anything. And it was just really funny. But it made me go, oh my God, of course I didn't know this. Where did this come from? But I do think that just before that, it could have been days before that, I had another experience where this was the first one, I think, where I was sitting there and I had been studying writing. So I'd been going to, I think, college, I guess that's what you call it, because we have different names for it in Australia. And I was trying to finish my my diploma, and I had an assignment. So I was working on my assignment, and my husband at the time had a friend over she was a great writer from what she'd shown me. She brought her writing, and I said to her, would you mind having a look at what I've done? And so we were at the computer and I'm typing and she's giving me some ideas. And then I turn around as we're chatting, and all of a sudden I see this cartoon looking liver above her head. And I'm thinking, I'm literally closing and opening my eyes. And she goes, "Do you have something in your eye?" And I said to her, "Well, no, but I have this really weird question to ask you. Would you mind if I ask?" And she says, "Yeah, sure." And I said to her, "So do you have liver problems?" And she went, "Yes, I've had them my whole life. How do you know?" And at that moment, that image changed. And I saw her grandfather, like it was, an image of an older man, and knowing that it was her grandfather and knowing that he had gone through the war and been in a concentration camp. So I asked her that, and she said yes. And then I said to her, "Do you get really bad nightmares, from it?" And she said yes. And I said to her, "Did your grandfather have the same issue as you with the liver?" And she said, "Yeah." And then I said to her, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, I know nothing about the body," because that wasn't my focus. I thought I was going to do acting and writing. I have had zero attention at school when it came to science or body parts. And I said to her, "I feel like your issues in your DNA," which was really interesting because she had this test done 2 years later, and that's exactly what showed up. But I then told her all this stuff that was very personal about her family. She didn't know, and she called her mom because she said to me, "I don't know." And her mom said, "Yeah, everything Inna said is exactly what happened." And then we just kind of sat there and staring at each other. And then she said to me, "I've learned more in the last kind of hour with you than I knew about my family in the last 25 years of my life." She was 25. And so I sat there and I kind of went, I really, really didn't know this. This is not possible. And so something is clearly opening up for me. And then I had a lot of experiences going outside and crossing the road and being bombarded by people's issues, or going to yoga class and being bombarded, and then being, naive enough to go and tell people some of this and being slapped, and realizing, well, do have to do something with this because I'm going to go mad. And kind of thinking to myself, what is it that I can do? Because, I've had some people say, "Well, did you study this at university?" And it's like, no, I studied writing, I studied about psychology, like psychological aspects of, literature and different, but there was no course like this in university. Otherwise I would have, it's like there was no existence. I don't think there still is. And, so I kind of had to go, well, I am a person who does study a lot. So I'm going to have to find ways to learn this, because I need to understand and put into some kind of context of how would I use this ability. So I sat with it and I thought, well, how about I interview people who've become well known, and written books about this type of thing. And at that point, my ex-husband was really into it. He had a library of books, that he'd buy daily, and bring daily. And, so he was great in terms of going, I'll direct you to which people you might want to look at who have these types of abilities. And if you interview them, and then especially if they're coming to Australia, and quite a lot of them were, you can then, send it to different magazines. But I'm sure, he was saying to me, I'm sure they'll invite you into their courses, mainly because I, did not have a job to pay for things. And that's exactly what happened. So they started inviting me. Obviously, there were courses I paid for. I'm just going to say I did spend a lot of money on trying to also learn. My biggest challenge, I'm going to say, was this: that I was still so young, right? So I really, really wanted them to tell me what to do, and to do it in the right way.
Mm.
But as I was watching them, um, I found that some of the things that they were doing were amazing in terms of healing and helping people, and some were not. Some of it actually did not look healthy in terms of the person and whoever, because I'd have somebody at the front and do different kind of techniques and exercises. And it was very difficult for me to, which also didn't help with my digestive issues because I was in the internal conflict about what to do, and whether I was going to, like, how do I follow this? And so at the beginning, being the good girl and the good student that I was really trying to, follow whatever I'd been taught. And I, I had an experience where I actually made a deal with this with a magazine, with this editor who was owned this particular kind of mind body spirit magazine. And the deal was that I called her and I said, can I do some healing on you? I'd been already doing it for about a year, maybe, practicing, just mainly practicing on friends and family and so on. And I think I had a few clients, but it was still early days. And I said to her, can you give me an ad? I don't want to be paid if if I do this, some healing on you. And she said, how about you come and do healing on everybody who works here? And there's about 20 people. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I'd never done that, one after another. If I did have clients, it would be like one every 3 days or one a week or something. And so I mean, okay, cool. And so because I had to do this, one person, next person, and it became very prevalent to me that as I was following these protocols that I had been taught, it was not working for these people. And they were like, oh, this feels weird. And I'm going, but I'm doing everything right. I'm following exactly what I've been taught. And then I remember going to the bathroom and feeling like I'm going to throw up, like literally feeling really sick, and going, I'm going to have to make a decision. And this decision is I'm going to have to listen to their bodies and actually go with that instead of what I'd been taught.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going, okay, after I came back, I thought to myself, I'm going to ask Elizabeth, who was the editor, if I can come back and do more on these three people, because I'm going to try my way. Yeah. And as I was doing it, people were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, my back pain's just really, oh, I feel so much better. And so, yeah, I said to Elizabeth, I've got to come back because, I've discovered something new. And she says, yeah, so, okay, fine. So I think I went to her place maybe for 2 weeks just to work on these people and to redo the ones that, I felt I wasn't doing well with. And I got these amazing testimonials from them, which is then how I kind of started getting people to come to me more, because I had this ad, in the magazine with people who worked at the magazine saying, this really works. And me kind of going, all right, I'm going to really have to trust myself on this. And then I ended up going to different events and talking to people, and they're like, oh, okay, can I come and see you? And can I have this experience? And then them telling their friends and so on, until somehow I ended up having this enormous amount of nurses start coming to me for healing sessions, and teachers. It was teachers and nurses. It was the strangest thing, because if somebody said, yeah, who's coming to you, it was like these, and then psychologists, and then some doctors. I'm not going to say a lot, but some. And yeah, I kind of went, wow, this is amazing. This is such a privilege. to do
And
this
how old
work.
were you then when this started happening?
I was 22, 23. I mean,
Amazing.
I did have people come to my door and open the door and go, is your mum there?
Yes. Okay. Fine. Yeah. But I have before we have to take a quick break. But it was so interesting when you were telling me about you went to this magazine's place and you were doing like the protocol, like the step by step of what you were taught. But then in my mind, it was screaming. I'm like, no, 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 wait. I'm like, but you're trying to apply your gift to someone else's lesson.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not how that works. So you found your own mechanism to
Yeah.
deliver your gift. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Partner today with CK Sims and Pod in My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we have been talking to Inna Segal, author of this incredible book, by the way, and she's been telling us about her journey from young adulthood up until around 23 years old when things sort of started to really happen, about how she got into the healing work, and how she discovered her gifts. So you did this work, you got this ad, you started seeing lots of nurses, teachers, psychologists, some medical doctors, and that sort of thing. So at what point, you must have been doing very well. At what point did you decide, I'm going to write a book? Because this book, it's not the first iteration, correct? I think there's been expansions on this book.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
grown and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a living body of knowledge, if you will, that continues to grow when you grow. So when was it that you decided that I'm going to take all of the things that I've learned and mastered and put it into such a well-formed book?
It was a funny experience. Well, firstly, I found that there were two things that were happening with my clients. One was that some of them who were newer to the work, if I would get them to come and I would say, okay, don't tell me anything, just I'll ask you questions if I need to know answers. So I would say, and I would start to kind of tune into their body and tell them, and most of them were great, but some they were really confronted by this. And so I thought to myself, there must be a better way of doing it for those newer people. And secondly, I thought, so I was giving people homework to do, because I kept saying to them, look, that there's the healing part that I do, and then there's the healing part that you do, because if it's only me, and even if some of them were seeing me once a week, some of them, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, it was like, it's not enough. You have to do something yourself. And they were coming back, and I would say, so did you do your homework? And you can't lie because I can tell. And they were kind of going, I lost it. And the amount of times, that I heard people say, I lost it, I remember thinking, if I wrote a book, they would not have that excuse. We would take that away. And then one day I was actually in a bookshop, and there was this man who had the bookshop, and he started publishing. It was more card decks, I'm going to say, than books. And I said to him, I have all these ideas for a card deck, for many card decks. Can we catch up? And I also had a radio show, like just a local one. Can you come on the radio show? Let's get to know you. So I went to meet him, and I literally had 11 ideas because I was like, oh, I'd rather be over prepared than under prepared, with this meeting. And I remember us sitting there and talking, and he went, look, if you did this, and that, you would, in a book, as opposed to a card deck, you would have a bestseller. That's what he said to me. And he said, if you do it, I will literally send you an agreement within like tomorrow or something, within days. And I went, really? Is it that easy? And he's like, yep. I was 26 at the time. And yeah, he was like, yeah, just tell me you want to do it and you'll have your contract. Because I had really worked on my co-creation of this, because everyone was saying, oh, it's so hard to get a publisher, it's so hard, it's so because he said to me, well, I have published books and I've done really well with some of them. You probably don't know, because I do card decks. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I wrote the book within a year.
Nice.
Interestingly, because he was more of a newer publisher at the time, usually with normal publishing, you still have to wait another, often like 6 months to a year to get it published. Whereas with him, it was just give me the work and I'll get it published type of thing. But what I did also, because I was having a lot of, kind of second like doubts about it, because of being so young and people kind of going, oh, what do you know at that age? So what I did before getting it published is I with my ex-husband, who was very helpful at the time, we sent it to every health practitioner, starting with the medical ones who are open-minded, right? So we sent it to, like well-known doctors who had talked about, mind-body connection. We sent it to psychiatrists. We sent it to psychologists. We sent it to people who were in charge of, the cancer ward patients. Like, it was different doctors as well. Or we sent it to surgeons. We sent it to chiropractors, physiotherapists, kinesiologists, reflexologists, Chinese medicine practitioners. And I actually said to all of them, I was like, if you see something that's off, please tell me before it's published. Like, if you see that I write something and it doesn't kind of connect to, and I knew obviously different modalities differ, but I was like, please tell me, because I'm really open-minded and teachable, and I would rather know before it's published, and I'd be happy to adjust it. So that was really profound, because I would get, the testimonial, and we got a lot. We really got a lot of them. And I'd open it, going, oh my God, what are they going to say? Or, some of them were from letters, some of them were from emails. The things that people said were so, profoundly beautiful and supportive, that each time I read it, I cried, because I was like, oh my God, wow. They can see how this can really benefit people before I put it out there. So yeah, it was quite a profound experience in getting it out.
What year was it first published?
2007.
And this one's from 2010,
10, I think.
Yeah, and this one's the winner of the 2011 Silver Nautilus Book Award for Wellness, Prevention, and Vitality as well. Yeah. And so, who's Dr. Bernie S. Sigal?
Well, he was actually, yeah. And it's spelled differently, so I wish he was.
It's totally spelled differently. Even though I will tell you something, the mind is funny, and so are the eyes. Because when I first saw the book, I read your name, and I read his name, and I'm like, father, husband, like, and that was all I thought of it. And then I read the book, and it was sitting here today, and I looked down, and then I'm like, oh sugar, they're not the same person. Like they're not like they're not affiliated. Their names are completely different. So who is this man that who's a
Well,
medical doctor who offered you? He wrote a very
well, he
lovely
was,
foreword.
yeah, he's actually a very famous author. He was a New York Times bestselling author many, many times over. And he was a surgeon. He worked, I'm pretty sure, with cancer patients for a long time. And he was one of the first people, and I met him afterwards, and we did a kind of a workshop at the same place together. Well, not together, but like one after another. But we had these beautiful conversations and connection. And he was one of the first people earlier on who started to talk about this mind body, emotions connection to illnesses in a very different way to what I did, but in the medical field, which was very courageous of him, and in particular with those people who are going through cancer. Yeah, he started then talking to the medical doctors about it, and got bullied, I'm pretty sure, for it, and not supported. Started, finding ways to help people, and I'm pretty sure he spoke about that. He was using art therapy as well with them, and asking them to draw, like, in different, he'd give them, a piece of paper, and they would draw how they saw themselves in kind of a different parts of the paper. So he would kind of, he would ask them to to show something of themselves on the left side and the right side and up and down, and he could tell what was going on with people around this, which is funny because my daughter's doing that type of a course at the moment, on art therapy and counseling. So it's yeah, he was just amazing. And so I had this very funny experience about it, because I was like, I have to get, being someone who's young and not having a medical degree, obviously, I was like, if I'm going to write this book and people are going to really, you know, go into it and do the processes, I do need a doctor, and someone who is well known, and who's written books and people are aware of their work. And I just could not think of anybody, that was appropriate. I just kept going, who is it? Who is it? And then I said, okay, all right, I'm going to ask for divine help with this, because I literally cannot think about it. And I remember I cannot think of anyone, and I have 2 months before the book needs to be published. And so as I asked this for divine help with this, nothing happened within for a couple of weeks. And I was like, hey, I know up there you may not have a time limit, but down here, I really need to find somebody. So you need to give me the name of this person. And one day I was doing a healing session with someone, and it was literally like a balloon, bubble. I'm going to say a bubble went into my head and then kind of exploded. And then I had the name Dr. Bernie Siegel, and I went, oh my God, that is so obvious considering my own name, even though it's spelled differently. And I said to my partner, my husband at the time, I was like, we have to contact, Bernie. And within, I think it was something like 24 to 48 hours, we had an answer from him. And I mean, you usually don't from well-known people, especially not directly. And the answer was, send me the book, and if I like it, I'll give you the forward. So it was very honest. And I think a week went by, and my partner at the time, Paul, he said to me, we were standing on this particular street, and he's like, so do you reckon you'll get the forward from Bernie? And as he said that, there was a truck that went by, and it said Bernie on it. And then I turned around, and there was a shop, and it said Sigal. And I went, if this is not a sign, I don't know what is. And within, I think within 24 hours, I got the forward from Dr. Bernie. So it was, again, just very synchronistic, fun experience in that sense.
And that makes history, really, this is how this book came to be. Now, I'm mindful of time, so I want to talk about, because we've talked a lot about your story, and I think everybody out there who's listening should definitely get this book. Um, One of the things that I love about this book, well, in his foreword, he mentioned that he had issues with his right ankle, and this was in relation to too many responsibilities. And so then I was like, okay, well, now I need to go like check some things, right? And there are some things that that I read, and I was like, oh, I'm like, I need to spend some more time on that because I'm 44 now, which is, I don't know how old you are. I have no idea. It's none of my business either if you don't want to tell me. Um, I would have guessed honestly 30, but I don't think it tracks because you look very youthful and young. So just FYI. The I have I didn't get a chance to fully read and retain the finger issue. So I now I'm like 44 years old. I'm noticing that I don't know if you can see it. And it started about, I would say, what, 6, 8 months ago. And I'll wake up in the mornings and my finger is so locked that I have to physically open it with my other hand. And then I thought it was very isolated, but then I'm starting to feel it in this hand. And then I'm like, I have had a lifelong fear of um, Alzheimer's. I don't know why. I've always had this fear of Alzheimer's. And I've also been tested. I was tested in 2010 for like MS, Parkinson's. There's another one that I was tested for because I was having neurological blackouts, like complete memory loss. Like I'm not even sure who I was in the moment. It was very scary to my best friend. Also very scary to me. But, that's fine. So from the most part, in 2017, I went through cognitive restructuring and I came out a different person and, I've been doing relatively well. But there's a lot of things that you talk about in here for certain ailments around my body that I'm like, okay. I'm like, that's kind of like a little on the nose, lady. Like, get out of my head. And I find it really interesting because it's super easy to find, right? So like if you're out there and you're interested in learning more, like picking up the book, it's almost like I want to say medical journal, medical encyclopedia, but it kind of is like one where you can think about what it is that where you're feeling the pain, flip to that section. And there's a lot of sections, like you cover a lot of area. Yeah. You talk about what are the contributing factors and what the remedies are. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that. How do you do that in your work? Like I know that you have, beyond the book, you have a gift of being able to see things. It comes to you in vision form, I guess. How does that work for someone?
Well, there's two sides to it, I'm going to be honest, because I really do like logic. I'm quite a logical person when it comes to things. And I like to understand what the function of a part of the body is in general. So I had to spend some time looking into that and understanding it after, my first experience with the liver above the head of my friend.
Of course.
And then I kind of, I find out how, well, what I realized was that every part of the body had wisdom, so to speak. It was like it was part of our own journey towards wisdom. And that each part of the body was saying, hey, whatever's going on in your life, I'm holding, because how else would you know how to live your life better in a way that is aligned? And so I started to look at things and I went, so if I have issues, you mentioned like Alzheimer's and stuff around my head, right? Blockages, what could that be related to? And memory issues. So my grandfather ended up having dementia. And, and I was thinking, especially with him, because I had time to think about it and I loved him a lot, or still love him. I was like, he went through very traumatic experiences in his life. And then he just would not talk about it and not process it. He pushed it away. And the more I met people who had Alzheimer's, and I would look at, sometimes there was a very particular trauma that happened. Sometimes it could have been relationship type traumas, like a narcissistic partner, or it could have been, a loss that they just did not process, and they would just push it away, and there was a refusal to bring it up, to feel anything about it, to talk about it. And so I kind of felt like, well, this area, is so connected to how we perceive, right? What is our perception of what happened and the experience, and whether we can reflect back on it and gain wisdom from it, or whether we go, it's just too hard, it's too much, I don't know how, and not really even allowing it to go further down. And I've seen that with people with Parkinson's as well, where it's like something, I mean, there's a lot that happens, but then something really shocking that shocks the nervous system so much where it's like, I can't do that. I cannot, deal with this. So the nervous system is going into that place of, oh, I can't, I cannot flow. Because the nervous system is a communication system, right? And so it's trying to both receive information from the outside world and also from within, and kind of balance it out and move things around in terms of the body connected to it. And so I kind of started going, wow, everything has its story. So a lot of people have eye issues, especially as they get older. And I was fascinated by it, mainly because I also don't want to have eye issues. I was like, I want to see. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized if they were older and started to have these issues, it was because they were seeing so many things in their life that were falling apart. Like people they loved getting older and dying, challenges that were heavy and hard to handle. And I realized they were seeing way more things that they didn't like than the things that they loved. And I went, you need to, like, literally, you consciously need to focus on what you love and go and find it, and go and look at those things that you love, and balance it out. And also, obviously, again, it was eyes, perception, how do I perceive things? And then I saw it in children and I was like, oh, something's going on in the family where things are not quite honest, and people are trying to make things be something different than they are. And the child's eyes literally adjust, and then they get glasses. And so, now they're kind of put into that little category. And so then I started looking at, I mean, every area, but like the throat, for instance, a lot of people get thyroid issues and, issues with their throat. And it was so much to do with communication. And it wasn't as much about just telling the truth, because people generalize everything and they go, you have this issue because you don't tell the truth. And it's like, well, it's not necessarily that you don't tell the truth. You could be telling the truth, but in an aggressive way. And people will shut you down, right? Like I had an experience with one of my very close friends yesterday where another friend went and spoke to her family about health issues, and this other friend has a lot of knowledge about health, and I actually connected them together. But she spoke to people who were completely new and very resistant, right, to to possibilities that you may co-create your disease or issue in a very direct way. And she herself is working on her feminine, because I've been like, you've got to work on the feminine side, because we have the left and the right side of the body tell us a story too. And the left side is telling you much more about your inner life and softening and nurturing and opening your heart, because it's on the side of the heart. And the masculine is like, go and get things done and make things happen, but still, be aware. And, what is your confidence? What is your belief in yourself? So again, there's so much wisdom inside the body. And so my friend who's working on the feminine is still like, it's early days for her in this working for the feminine, but she's also very, very direct. And, and in her family, again, this is how we create things, right? In her family, people have rejected her because she's had to be strong and she hasn't been very feminine in that softer way. And even though she's aware of it and she's working on it, she again spoke to people who are like the people in her family who are not open-minded to this, alternative ways. And she talked about her own story of healing, and they did not take well to it. And so they kind of rejected her, which is like, oh, you're repeating the pattern because that's all you know. Because I was like, why did she do that? Why do we do these things? And it was like, this is all she knows. And she's trying, but it's not quite connecting. So it takes time, right? It takes time for people to recognize these things. But essentially every part is telling a story, like the digestive system, right? I think you mentioned you've struggled with it too. Well, it's your ancestry meets your life story. So who in your family over the different generations had difficult experiences that they did not process? Essentially, they did not digest. They just pushed it away and kind of went, oh, we're not going to deal with this. Too hard basket, right? And as opposed to experiences that were looked at and understood, and we gained wisdom from them. And then it meets your own experiences. Like I had an experience with a narcissistic partner at one point in my life, and I went, you know what, I'm going to work on this until it is fully transformed, because the more I learned, and I'm the person that gets in there and studies everything about it to understand it, because I didn't even understand what narcissism was until we broke up and separated. And I was like, and I'm not putting a time limit on it until I heal, basically, until I had transformed from it. And I'm a more whole, more transformed person. And I remember meeting people who know nothing about this experience, and they're, and it was maybe a year and a half later, and I'm still really in the midst of transforming it. And they're like, why can't you just move on? Like, why can't you just put it aside? And it was like, well, because if I put it aside, I will end up with a health condition. And some of these people who were talking about it are the people who had difficult relationships, put it aside, and ended up with either cysts or growth inside of their body. And I was like, I'm not going to point a finger and say, because I don't want what you've experienced, but this is why I'm doing the deeper work, because, I understand how things become a real issue and a real problem. And so I'd rather do it my slow way than the surgical way, right? Or the way of, oh my God, I've got cancer, I'm going to die type of way. So, what people need to understand about healing is that it's layered and it takes time, usually, and sometimes people said, yeah, but it didn't take long for you. And it's like, are you kidding me? The years of suffering and struggle and, being stuck, that like, I started early. I was experiencing pain when I was 5 in my stomach and digestive system, so it wasn't an instant. And I also went to countless practitioners who potentially prepared my body, for my nervous system, for being able to have that release eventually when I finally came to the party, right? I'm not going to say that they didn't help me at all. They actually did. I just wasn't coming to the party of understanding it, that I was involved in this. And so it's like that all their help was being undone constantly by me not getting this part of the story, that I need to hold it. It's me who has to hold the transformation. So, even though it seems to people like, oh, it only took a few weeks for the psoriasis and all this, it was like, no, it took years. And then the last few weeks were like, oh, okay, this is what it's about, right?
Yeah,
Which
you
is how the
have
body works.
how all that pre-treatment was there, sort of waiting a little bit, and then when I like how you said when you came to the party, that
Yeah.
was that was how it manifested so quickly. So I'm very cognizant of time.
Yeah.
Um, you have been wonderful to talk to, and people can reach out to you on your website, correct?
Yeah. So people can go to Inna Segal, Segal.com, and have a look. But what I really encourage people to do is to, if you're curious, delve a little bit deeper. I have a lot of free resources, but in particular, there's several free masterclasses. So it depends on where you are in the journey. If you're right at the beginning and you want to connect to my book, The Secret Language of Your Body, essentially you just have to go innersegal.com/secret, and you will, you know, you will go on a little journey for a couple of hours where I really connect all the pieces and also give you a process, or several, I think there's 2 processes, of connecting to your body, kind of waking it up a little bit, working with, if you have pain or if you have anything going on. And so you'll actually understand why I'm saying certain things, or I'm saying that the pain and where you have the issue may not be where it started. So I go and explain all of this. So that's a great one to have a look at. But if you're on a slightly deeper path, you might want to look at my kind of deeper foundational course and masterclass, where I talk about archetypes and how they impact our body in terms of emotional self, and what happens. And that is just looking at, again, my website, innersegal.com/masterclass. So you just have to remember the word masterclass, and you can go on, that journey, or both, and explore, because, there's so much to learn and understand. It's very exciting because it puts you in the driver's seat. Essentially, it makes you go, I'm the one who is navigating things as I understand some foundational principles of my inner health.
I love this. Also, you can pick up a copy of the secret language of your body, and read it because it's full of wonderful things. And it's one of those things I think that you can read, but then you can go back and like read again and absorb more, right? Because like I browsed through the remedy, but now I'm very interested in how to fix this finger and why. So we're gonna deep dive there. You've been a wonderful guest to have on the show. Thank you so much for coming on and talking and telling us about your life and how you got to where you are today. And is there something coming up for you? Anything new people should be looking out for?
Well, lots of new things. I'm always doing something new. So I'm always doing courses that help people go deeper, and they're all online now. And some of them are live, some of them are already recorded. And I'm also going to be, I'm completing another book, and that one is actually understanding the stages of healing. Because,
Mm.
I personally, as I mentioned here, I was actually stuck in stage 1 and 2 for many, many years of my life, until I got to the when we get to stage 7, where we actually have a release and transformation. So, and a lot of people are, just because they don't understand, how the healing journey works in itself. So that's what I'm working on in terms of a book.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. There's also The Secret of Life Wellness, right? Is the other book that you've written that you can look out for as well. And so thank you again for being here. And for everyone at home, until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.